everybody, this is Hannah from Suffolk Parks and Recreation at the lovely Suffolk Art Gallery, and we have an awesome activity for you today. It's very fall themed. I think you're really gonna like it. So what we're gonna make today are our very own handmade sketchbooks, and we're actually gonna use these sketchbooks in next month's video as well. So these are going to be little multimedia watercolor sketchbooks, and we're going to make them so that next month we can use them to make some nice little watercolor paintings in here. So what we are going to need today are 2 pieces of thin cardboard. I have mine cut to 5 inches by 5 inches, and you're gonna need 2 pieces because one's gonna be the front cover and one's gonna be the back cover. You're gonna need 8 pieces of watercolor or multimedia paper, and you're going to need them cut into 10 by 5 strips. So 10 long, 5 wide. And you're gonna need 8 of those. And multimedia paper is paper that you can use with a variety of different art materials. So it's usually pretty sturdy, it's usually thicker than most paper, and it usually has something called a tooth. And a tooth is a texture on a piece of paper. So you'll think of, you'll notice that a piece of printer paper is really smooth, so that doesn't have any tooth. But if you look at a piece of watercolor paper or craft paper, that has a tooth. It has a little bit of a texture on it. You can feel that it's kind of rough and bumpy when you touch it. So we want some sort of paper with a tooth and a little bit thicker paper. And we will also need a piece of thin paper. So this paper, super thin, doesn't have a tooth. This paper is going to be used for our nature rubbings. So we want it to be thin because we want it to pick up the rubbing when we do it. We're also going to need some scissors, a pencil, an eraser, a ruler. We're going to need some string to tie our book together. You can also use twine, embroidery thread, whatever works for you. We're going to need a glue stick, a hole punch, some colored pencils, and we're going to need our leaves and our different textures for our rubbing that we're going to do. Pretty cool. And I think that's it. So let's get started. All right, so first things first, we have to cut our cardboard and our paper to make our book. So for our cardboard, that's gonna be our front cover and our back cover. They are each 5 inches by 5 inches, so they are the same size. We just have 2 of them. And for our paper, for our pages of our book, I have 8 strips of this. It is 10 inches by 5 inches. And what we're going to do is just fold it in half to make the pages. So if we have 8 of these, we're folding them in half. How many pages do you think we're gonna have in our book? We are going to have 16 pages because that's 8 times 2, right? So I've got all my little pages here. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sets, and they each have 2 pages, so we have 16 pages. All right, so now that we've got all of that cut, we're going to start putting our holes in here. So for the front cover, I've decided which piece I want to be the front, which I want to be the back. This is going to be my front. And what I've done on the left-hand side, I've measured in 1/4 of an inch. And up here, I've measured in 1/4 of an inch, and I've drawn a line. And then I've taken my page and laid it flat against a ruler like this. And I've made a mark at the 1 inch, the 2 inch, the 3 inch, and the 4 inch marks. So I should have 4 marks here, and they're each inch apart. And those little marks are where we're gonna put our holes. So I'm gonna take my hole puncher, and I am going to punch my holes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, depending on what type of cardboard you're using and what type of hole puncher you got, you might have to work your hands a little harder or get someone who has really strong hands to help you punch it out. But my hands were strong enough today, so that's good. So I've got my 4 little holes here. They're not perfect, but as long as they're pretty close, you're good to go. So now I'm gonna take my other cover, and instead of doing all that measuring with the ruler like I did on the first one, I'm just gonna line them up, and I'm gonna punch 4 holes in this one. Because once you line it up, you'll know that they're all gonna be in the same spots. There we go. There we go. All right. So we have holes in both our front and our back cover. So now we also need holes in our pages. So we're gonna do the exact same thing with our pages. So I'm gonna take this first little set of pages. Remember, it's the 10-inch piece folded in half like that. And I'm gonna line it up just like I did with the back cover. I'm gonna line it up. You see how there's white in there? I'm gonna punch through each of those holes. And I'm gonna do this with all of those pages I made. So, once you've finished punching all of your holes and your hand is nice and sore, you might need to give it a nice massage. We are ready to tie our book together. So we've got all of our pages punched through, and we've got both our front and back cover punched through. So I'm going to show you how to tie these pages together. It's a really simple bookbinding technique, and I'm going to show you an overhead shot of it so you can see it a little better. So let's get started. All right, so we've got all our pages and our covers cut out, and now we've got them all hole punched on the side. So we are ready to tie our book together. So first things first, we gotta make sure it's all lined up. We want all the holes on the same side. And we are going to make sure that we know which one we want to be the front and which part we want to be the back. So for me, this is gonna be the front right here. So what I have done, I have cut a length of string that is at least 3 times the size of my book, or the length of my book here. And I have taped both ends with a little bit of tape just to make it easier to thread. So you know how on your shoelaces they have that little plastic piece? It's called an egglet, and that helps it be able to be easier to be threaded through the holes. So that's what we're doing here. And what I am going to do first is I am going to go through the front of the first hole. We're gonna pull it through. And then I'm gonna leave about 3 or 4 inches hanging off. And then I'm gonna take that little end and I'm gonna thread it through the front once more. And sometimes it can be kind of tricky to get through all the pages and all the holes, but you gotta make sure you do it. And then I'm gonna pull it kind of tight. So something that we have to remember is we don't wanna pull any of these knots that we're threading, we don't wanna pull any of it too tight. Because if it's too tight, our book is not gonna be open. It's not gonna wanna open, and it's gonna be rigid, and it's not gonna be nice. So we wanna make sure that we're keeping a little bit of looseness, a little bit of give in our yarn when we're pulling it through. So I've pulled one kind of loop through, and now I'm gonna do one more through the front and out the back. And now I am just gonna tie a knot, like so. And you can do a double knot if you want extra security. Nothing wrong with that. All right, cool. So we've got our first hole threaded. So what we're going to do now, we are going to go through the second hole, we are going to go through the back. And you wanna make sure you can get through all those little holes. Sometimes it takes a little bit of maneuvering, but you got it. All right, we pulled it through the back, pull it out the front. And now we're gonna take this end and we're gonna pull it through the back again. All the way through, just like so. All right, now we're gonna go on to our next hole. So we're going to go this end again, through the back of the third hole. put it all the way through, like so. And then we're gonna go through the back of the third hole again. We're gonna pull it all the way through, like so. All right, then we're gonna go through the back of the fourth hole, the last hole. Pull it, and then we're gonna go through the back again. And pull it. And then since this is the last hole, we're gonna go through the back one more time just for good measure. And then we are going to thread it through the last two. And we're going to tie a nice blue knot. And let's do a double knot. Why not? All right, and then we're gonna pull it kind of tight. And there we go. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut off these little spare ends, but I'm not gonna cut off too much. Maybe I'll leave about an inch of the string left. And if you want to cut the string really short so you don't have these little tails, what I would suggest is dipping your knots in a little bit of glue or something to just hold them. Because I found that if you cut them too short, the knots will want to come untied, and we don't want that. So our book is all tied together. So we got our pages, we got our covers, and now we are ready to decorate it. So let's do that. All right, so we've made our sketchbook and now we are ready to decorate it and make it look pretty. So what we are going to do for the outside of our sketchbook today is we are going to do nature rubbings. So we are going to collect different items from outside, leaves, flowers, twigs, anything that you think has an interesting texture, and we are going to do a nature rubbing of it, and that is going to help decorate our sketchbook. So what I've done earlier today, I went out outside the gallery and looked at all of our lovely plants, and I found some different leaves of different shapes and sizes and textures, and I'm going to use these to create my rubbings. So, and we'll show you a little bit, a more zoomed in example in just a second, but I'll show you an example from this angle as well. What I'm going to do is put my leaf flat on the table, and then I'm going to put a piece of really thin paper over it. If you use paper that's too thick, it's not gonna come through. And then I'm gonna grab a colored pencil. You can use a crayon, you can use a pastel, anything that's kind of has that sort of texture. And I am going to just start coloring over the top of that leaf. And what you should notice as you start coloring over the top is you should start seeing all the veins and the lines and the texture of the leaf come through on the paper. And when you're looking for leaves, it's important to remember you don't want any leaves that are super dry and crunchy, because if you press down on them, they'll just crumble. But you also don't want leaves that are super wet. So when I went out today and got my leaves, I just kind of wiped them off with a paper towel, just got all the extra dirt, water, grime off of them, because I don't want that to transfer onto my paper either. And after you finish your rubbing, you can kind of experiment with it. You can test it out. Not every one has to be perfect. You don't have to use every single one for your cover. You can try different colors, different textures, see what works. Maybe you can even make a composition with the different textures and you can set them up and put the leaves in different positions and see what it looks like. But after you do that, you are going to cut out your rubbings in any way that you want. You can cut them out all separately. You can cut it out into one block that'll just go on the cover just in one piece. And you're going to glue your rubbings onto the cover of your sketchbook. So we're just gonna use a glue stick today. You can also use liquid glue, Elmer's glue, whatever works for you, whatever you have. You just wanna make sure that you don't put the glue on too thick or else it's gonna go through this paper because this paper is thin, so we gotta be really gentle with it. So we don't need too much glue. We're just gonna put the glue down on our cover and then you're gonna stick your papers with your rubbings in whatever order or way you would like. you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed making your very own sketchbook with me. And remember that we'll be using these in next month's video, so if you want to hang on to it, you might use it again. And have a very safe and happy fall and a happy holiday if you celebrate. And I'll see you next time. Bye.